All right, everybody. Welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm Jacob Turner. He's Andrew Jones, and we're here for another daily drop. And we're here to talk a little NBA draft, specifically Drake Powell, and also looking at Carolina's history under Hubert Davis with first and second round draft picks in the NBA draft. Because we've crunched some numbers behind the scenes. We looked at some other schools. We looked at Carolina's recent record. Track record, I should say, with guys getting drafted. And I think there was some, I don't know if alarming numbers are the right word, but some interesting numbers that I think from a Carolina fan's perspective is a little bit concerning in some ways. And we've done, I think we did remind me what we did earlier this offseason. We did an NBA podcast earlier this offseason. All-Stars. We were talking about Kobe White and him.
Kobe White, the first All-Star this century.
Yeah, which again wasn't the most positive, didn't paint, Carolina and their track record of NBA guys in the most positive light. And something I bring up with you, as you pointed out this year, is, you go to a Carolina game, they used to play the NBA video with all the, highlights of former guys that are in the league and everything like that. They don't even have that video anymore. Again, which kind of think just kind of showcases what we're here to talk about a little bit. So drafts tonight. Drake Powell from all mock drafts, late first round, early second round kind of guy. It does seem like he's a guy that is going to get drafted tonight, based on the mock drafts and everything.
And let me jump in. Regardless of where he's drafted, this podcast has a shelf life.
Yeah, it's not really about
Drake and the draft. It's a broader picture. So don't think, this is before the draft. It's not worth your time. No, it is, because regardless of where Drake is drafted, what we're talking about doesn't change.
No, it doesn't, because, again, the main thing that I want to kind of start with is we're going to focus on Hubert Davis's tenure, and I'm sure maybe we'll talk a little bit before that, but in particular, Hubert Davis's tenure from when he started back in 2022, his first season, to now. And when you look and you break it down, you look at the numbers. Since then, Carolina's had no first-round draft picks. Their most recent first-rounder was Day'Ron Sharpe all the way back in 2021, who, again, was a one-and-done. They've only had one guy drafted in Hubert Davis's tenure, that being Harrison Ingram last year, second round, 48 pick. And we looked into it, a guy that played 5 games last year for the Spurs, averaged about 7 minutes, so mainly played in the G League. Now, yeah, exactly. Now, I'll go through and compare it to some other programs here a little bit later, but AJ,
this is all pre-25 draft.
Yes, the draft, again, has not happened yet.
It's really 3 years.
Yes, 22, 23, and 24.
Yeah.
And again, I'll throw out some numbers comparing it to other schools and other blue blood programs later to kind of illustrate what we're talking about here.
We'll have no more than 2 after this draft, because RJ's not going to get drafted. So
yeah, best case, it'll be maybe one guy in the first round. If Powell goes late first round, he would be the only guy that's gone the first round. Or Hubert Davis.
Reminder: this has shelf life, so you're going to hear us talk about something that's already occurred. But this has shelf life, so
forget where we don't really care where Powell goes tonight. First or second round doesn't really matter. This is kind of illustrating the bigger picture with, regardless, Carolina's production of first and second round NBA talent, or I should just say NBA draft talent, has not been the greatest, really going back years, but particularly in the Hubert Davis era. So, AJ, when you first hear those numbers, doesn't it come off as a little bit surprising? I mean, I'm saying to you off camera, this is North Carolina we're talking about, man. Like, it is a little bit surprising, all these just lack of NBA pipeline that seems to be kind of plaguing Carolina right now.
There's a contingent out there that thinks, and part of my voice a little bit, because I'm getting all my steps in 100-degree temperatures, and it's really kind of affecting my throat some.
Scorching.
So it's 16,000 a day the last 4 days out there in this crap.
Yeah, you're probably sweating just gallons of sweat.
And I'm just destroying these. Yeah. But a lot of people think that we're just out here trying to dog Hubert and dump it on the program, and it's all negatives. Of course, they never watch the positive stuff. Yeah. Then there are people who think, you guys are just trying to build up all these portal guys. We go straight down the middle, as Don Drysdale used to say, right down Broadway. That's really dating myself there.
You do that about every podcast.
That's like before my time, even, basically. So it's right down the middle. Mm. And the reality is, this program has not produced the kinds of players it used to produce for whatever reason. I'm not going to say this is a Hubert Davis problem 100%, because this problem started a while ago. since 2017, when Justin Jackson was a first rounder after his third year at Carolina, the only players that have been drafted in the first round have been guys that were there for 1 year that came to Carolina as freshmen. Cam Johnson was a 2-year guy, first round pick, but he was a transfer from Pitt. So in 17, you had Tony Bradley, who just played in the NBA Finals. In 19, you had Kobe White and Nasir Little. Nasir should have come back to school. Probably would have, maybe he would have been in the league this year if he would have come back to school. He didn't. Then you had Cole Anthony, Day'Ron Sharp. Yeah. And now I think that it's something to talk about. I do think it's concerning because that's what recruits see. Recruits care about these things. The recruits care about NIL, but they know that their NIL, the real money, is at the next level. Some of the fringe guys will stay in college because they get money. The guys that aren't fringe have no need to stay in college. They're going to go get money at the next level. Carolina has done a pretty good job recruiting, especially the last 2 years, better than people give Hubert credit for. He's had the number 9 and number 7 class the last 2 years. But will that manifest into first-round NBA picks? How many? Does Caleb Wilson become a first-round NBA pick? Those things are important. Clint Jackson, when he was our basketball recruiting guy, used to always emphasize about how, Roy needs this freshman to blow up. Because there was a narrative that started developing that freshmen don't explode under Roy, which is kind of weird because he had some freshmen like Marvin Williams and Tony Bradley who were on national championship teams that didn't start that were first-round picks. And by the way, Tony's still in the NBA. Marvin lasted forever. But it was a narrative nonetheless. Narratives don't always have to be based in reality or entirely in reality. And he used to say, boy, he needs Caleb Love to blow up and go pro right away. It didn't happen. And Clint would say right now, Hubert needs Caleb Wilson to blow up and go pro right away. Yeah. They needed Ian Jackson this past year to do the same thing. And you know what? For a 7-8 game stretch, it looked like he was. And then it didn't happen. So it's important. And you're going to read some numbers about some other schools, and one of them is down the road. And Carolina fans are going to say, well, we've been in a national title game more recently than they have. In fact, Carolina has been in 3 national title games since the last time Duke played on Monday night. 16, 17, 22. I get all that. But at some point, all that talent's going to break through. And Duke has been 2 of the last 4, by the way. And they've been in Elite 8 one of the other years. Carolina's been in 1 Elite 8 since 2017. And that run a couple years ago, it's not a fluke, but it just wasn't expected. It wasn't consistent with how that team was all year long. Yeah. We don't have any of these 22 and 12 Duke teams getting to a Final Four. They're all 30 and 5 and that kind of thing. And I think Carolina fans would take that for the most part. So you're going to read some numbers off here in a few minutes, but you got to have the dudes to win titles still. It's not a coincidence that the last time Carolina won a national title, they had 2 first-round draft picks on the roster. And they had a few other guys that played in the NBA, like Theo Pinson, like Isaiah Hicks, et cetera. They also had a Joel Berry. Yeah. They also had Kennedy Meeks, who were fringe NBA players. So,
and you know what it is too, AJ, is 2 things can be true at the same time, right? We can sit here and say exactly what you just said about Duke. And yes, valid argument. Completely understand what you're saying. A lot of people are going to say that. But you can also sit here and say, well, I don't think it's an unrealistic expectation for North Carolina, a blue blood program like North Carolina, to produce more NBA talent than 1 second-round draft pick since 2021. Like, is anything we're saying out of turn here? You know what I mean?
No.
I think that is pretty basic. You know what I mean? I don't know. Call me crazy, but
the one NBA draft pick of the Hubert era scored 4 points in the NBA.
To me, that's just not. It's not about dogging on Hubert because, like you said, you can go back.
And how much will Drake play next year?
Too. That's what I'm saying. It's not like Drake is.
I don't see Drake playing 30 minutes a night in the league. Not yet. Down the road, I think he can.
I think the potential's there, but yeah, again, he's not some lottery pick expected to go in the top 15 or something tonight. I think there's a lot to like about his game, but even Drake Powell was a little bit of a surprise that he went for. I think a lot of people before he entered was like, yeah, he'll probably come back. It'll probably benefit him. Then he goes to the draft. So can't blame him for doing that, but he wasn't some, lottery pick throughout the season. Now, let me throw some numbers to provide a little bit more context about why, again, we wanted to hop on a podcast to talk about this and not make it sound super negative, because I think these numbers kind of help illustrate the point we're trying to make here. Duke, you mentioned Duke, school down the road. Nobody wants me to talk about him. We're going to talk about him anyway.
This is all pre-2025.
Yeah, this is from 2022 until before tonight's draft. So the last 3 drafts, 2022, 23, and 24. Duke has had 7 first-round draft picks, including Paolo Banchero, who was a number 1 overall pick a few years ago. Like I mentioned, in that time period, just to provide some more context on Carolina, no first-round picks from 2022 to 2024 drafts. Could be a Drake Powell tonight, potentially. Again, that doesn't really have any context on it. I think it'll still illustrate where we're at right now. UConn, let's focus on another blue blood program, won a national championship in recent years, because the argument with Duke is, well, they haven't won a national title. Okay, let's go look at a couple programs that have, okay? 3 first-rounders, 7 total draft picks in the first and second round. Obviously, there's only 2 rounds for those who don't know in the NBA draft since 2022.
Or 22 through 24. Let's keep qualifying it just so people
2022 through 24. 22, 23, 24. Last 3, just so people know. Kansas, 6 total. A team that beat Carolina in the national title a couple years ago. 6 total draft picks, 3 first-rounders. Okay? It's 3 times more than Carolina's had. Up until tonight. Could change. Kentucky, 7 total, 5 first-rounders. Another team that kind of make the same argument with Duke when it comes to winning national titles. Bring a lot of talent in, but not necessarily producing national championship winning teams. It's fine. And then I'll throw this one in the mix too. Indiana, team that a lot of people don't even consider a blue blood anymore. You hear that argument all the time. How do you consider Indiana a blue blood anymore?
They've missed the tournament 7 of the last 9 years. My brother's an Indiana grad.
He'll love to hear this. He'll love to hear this.
And he hates the reality of IU basketball. Trust me.
And even with that reality, it's bleak. We've had 3 guys selected in the draft since 2022, 2 first-rounders, twice as much as Carolina. So I think, again, to provide a little bit more context and not just focus on the team down Tobacco Road a little bit, when you look at these other blue blood programs, a couple of which have won national titles in the last, 3 years, it just kind of goes to show, I think, the concern, a legitimate concern, and the question mark of, okay, Carolina's been down a little bit. We've talked about that a lot. And they're also not producing NBA talent anymore. And again, when you think of a school like North Carolina, synonymous with basketball and elitism when it comes to this sport, I don't want to say the word unacceptable, but I find it concerning with the sheer amount of, production that they're putting in the league. Because at the end of the day, you have 4 years in college at most. I guess 5 technically with COVID stuff. It's not the end all be all with basketball. All these guys that come to Carolina want to ultimately play at the next level. That any high level recruited guy, ultimate goal is to play at that next level. Even the D2, D3 baller will have that dream. And from a recruiting standpoint, especially now, AJ, in this world we live in, where there isn't as much of a discrepancy anymore between a team like North Carolina and a Texas Tech because of the money going around. You can go to Texas Tech and make a crap ton of money. When years ago, kind of the allure of Carolina when players weren't getting paid through NIL was a little bit more of something that could push you over the edge. We don't have is that big of a discrepancy anymore in terms of that with NIL. I think continuing this trend of not producing guys that go to the next level, ultimately, I think that catches up with you in today's era of college basketball. And I do think it's something that I'm not necessarily sure how you fix it, but I do think it's something in a trend that needs to change sooner rather than later. Because if it does, what does that mean? It means Carolina is producing more NBA talent. And I ultimately think that is also going to help the product while they're at North Carolina, because you're going to have more, talented players here. If they can play at the next level, they're obviously very talented. So I don't know. I think that provides a little bit more context to it and kind of illustrates what we're trying to say in this podcast, while also not coming off as just super negative or trying to dog on Hubert, because that's not what we're trying to do here.
Texas Tech has been to as many Final Fours and national title games as Carolina last year.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would consider them.
And more Elite Eights.
Yeah, exactly.
And they just spent $1 million on a softball pitcher who imploded in the title game.
Unbelievable, the money being spent in
and they're giving her that same contract again for next year. It's wild. This is an issue. It needs to change. Mm-hmm. And for all the people who think that we're dogging Hubert, we actually have a pod coming up about, hey, recruiting's been better than people give it credit for. Obviously, what do you do with it when you get those guys? That's a big question. But the reality is North Carolina, there are a lot of North Carolina Tar Heel basketball boxes that are not being, maybe they're checked a little bit, but they're not being filled in like they used to be. You got to fill them in. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you had a 1 seed, you had a run to the title game, but all the rest of the infrastructure doesn't look the same as it did. It doesn't look like Carolina. It doesn't feel as much like Carolina. And that's okay to bring it up, because I would imagine everybody listening now, whether they're upset about us talking about it or whether they're like angry that it's happening, all wants Carolina to be at the standard that was Carolina. And you could still do that in this current climate. They got money. We've talked about that. We know what was spent. We've gone over that many, many times. That's not going to be an issue. You've got this gambling tax revenue that's going to come in that's going to help Carolina. Carolina's going to make more money moving forward. Bubba Cunningham has got some really interesting plans in place about raising more money. It's not going to be an issue. Plus, you guys can give. So, and they're going to get full revenue share. They're going to get money. It's not going to be an issue. But they got to win, and they got to develop players. And that's, to me, what UNC is. Win, hang those banners. Carolina's got 3 ACC tournament championships this century.
I know.
We could go on and on and on.
That's crazy.
About a lot of things. And it's not that long ago that Carolina won 3 titles in 12 years. Was in another final. It was in 2 other Final Fours, played in 4 title games. The one they lost was at the buzzer. And they had a 2012 team that was the best team in college basketball until Creighton screwed things up. 2008 was probably the best team in the country, but they just imploded against Kansas in the Final Four. They were in the Elite 8 in 2007. 06 with a bunch of freshmen. They were a 4 seed, won 24, 25 games.
Yeah,
so
I think
you want to get back to that, and you could still do that in this current climate because others are doing it. If they can do it, Carolina can do it, and you still have there's still an allure about that brand, about that uniform, about the laundry in the building, about who you might see in the building, about walking those hallways. There's still enough kids that will want to be a part of that. There are other Seth Trimbles out there.
Mm-hmm. And two, just last thing I'll say on it. I mean, it is unfortunately from a Carolina perspective, a recruiting tool that will and is used against them. I mean, if you're an opposing, coach or someone trying to get a top 5 guy or, a highly recruited guy out of high school, and you're at a school like a Kentucky, like I said, where you've had 5 first rounders since 2022. Of course you're going to bring that up. Why would you go to Carolina? They're not going to produce you. They're not going to develop you for the next level. Here's the track record showing that we will. And we're also going to be really elite every year. A lot of those
are one and dones, and a lot of Dukes have been one and dones. And I think some Carolina fans might have a problem with that. But you didn't have a problem with Kobe. You didn't have a problem with Nasir. You didn't have too much a problem with Cole. You had no problem with Dayron. Mm-hmm. Some might have a problem with Drake Powell leaving early. Some may have had a problem with Tony Bradley leaving early. Look, you're going to get guys for 1 year now. You build teams on a 1-year basis. So if you can get a great one and done who's a first-round pick, you're going to take a transfer who's 1 year and done. What if Henry Vasar is 1 year and done and is a first-round pick? You're going to embrace that. You had Brady for 1 year, and he's forever a Tar Heel. He's a Sooner and a Tar Heel for the rest of his life. Mm-hmm. So I view one and done's different now than I used to, simply because everybody's kind of a one and done. They're one and done until they stay. Mm-hmm. They're all one and done until they stay. Mm-hmm. So even Seth, for as much as people love that he stuck around, he did put his foot out the door a year ago and decided to come back in. So even he was tempted to move on.
Yeah.
And he's as true blue as it gets.
Yeah. And again, you can do both. That's why we listed some of these other blue blood programs. You can be very, very successful at the college level, win national titles like Utah and Kansas, and also produce NBA talent. The two aren't, it's not like you can do one without one and you can't do the other if you do this one. No, you can do both. And I think Carolina, with the program it is, trying to get back to where it gets to get, in an ideal world, you're going to be very successful at the college level with your program and also produce guys for the next level. Because at the end of the day, I know the college has changed with NIL and everything, AJ, but there is a finite amount of eligibility you have in college. So at the base level of it, college sports is supposed to prepare you for the professional level too. You can go play 30 years in the NBA if you can do it. Obviously you can't because, eventually your body's going to wear out. but you can't do that in college. So it is a preparedness for the next level thing too. So if you're Carolina, why not try to be successful at both of them? You know what I mean? That's why I look at it.
Find the last college national champion that didn't produce a decent number of NBA guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's just how it goes, man. It's just absolutely how it goes. I mean, just go look back at that 2009 Carolina team, 2005 UNC team. Just
He's talking about 2019 Virginia. Oh, they're not that talented. It's just Tony squeezing the game. I don't know. Some of those guys are still in the league.
Yeah, 100%.
Pretty good players.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a super talented team.
Yeah, in an ideal world, you do both at Carolina, and because again, this is a major college basketball program or blue blood program, one of the most historic in college basketball and college sports as a whole. I don't think it's an unrealistic or asking too much for Carolina to maybe produce a little bit more NBA talent than essentially one guy since 2021. I don't think that's crazy talk here. But again, let us know in the comments. Do you not care about NBA guys going to the NBA? Are you really just concerned with how successful, Carolina is or the players are when they are at Carolina? I can understand that argument in some ways. Or do you kind of agree with us where why can't you be successful at both? Why can't you have win a lot of games at North Carolina and also be a really good NBA player for a long time too?
Real quickly, I know a lot of Carolina fans who want guys to go to the NBA and do well, but they don't watch them because they're not really NBA fans. So you can be a college first guy, not really an NBA fan, but still want them to do well in the league. I would imagine even the ones who don't really follow the league know that Kobe White's done well.
Yeah, I think most Carolina fans take pride in knowing that too.
Yeah, they used to. The All-Star game just be loaded with Tar Heels.
Yeah,
back in the day.
I think if you give a Carolina fan a choice, I think you'd want a lot of your players to have success at Carolina and have success at the next level because, again, that helps you attract more players like them, and it's a benefit for everybody. So, yeah, I think Carolina needs to get back to that point. It'll be interesting to see if they can kind of work their way back, and it'll be interesting to see where Drake Powell goes tonight as well. By the time this podcast comes out, we won't be too far away from the draft starting. So, hopefully, Drake Powell goes tonight, and he can be another draft pick added to that list for North Carolina because it's a pretty small list right now. But yeah, maybe that'll change soon. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Appreciate you watching this one as always. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. Keep it locked to our social media channels as well. We've hinted at it, some things in the works, but nothing finalized yet. It'll be first announced if and when any of that stuff happens on our social media channels like Twitter and Facebook. So,
well, I'm looking forward to getting stuff out there, but we can't right now.
Can't do it yet.
Pieces are still coming together.
As you say, and you're going to hate this, AJ. You got to cross the I's and what do they say? Cross the
T's and dot the I's.
I was going to say cross the I's, and I was like, that didn't make any sense. Cross the T's and dot the I's.
Cross the I's and dot the T's.
I about said that on here.
That's like when I don't know why I thought of this, but in '98, the great home run chase with Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire. I'll never forget the late Massachusetts Senator Ted Kennedy, who was known to imbibe every once in a while. He was given some speech, and some of these politicians try to jump on whatever's popular at the time.
Yeah, you don't say.
And you could find it out there. He says, Mike McGuire and Sammy Sosa. He had no freaking clue who they were. That's like crossing the I's and dotting the T's, baby.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. I used to have a Sammy Sosa jersey, and
we used to play that audio in the Star News all the time when I used to work the desk at the Star News.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I had a Sammy Sosa Cubs jersey growing up. I don't know how old I was. I was young though, and I don't know why I had one, to be honest with you, because my parents aren't Cubs fans or anything. But I mean, Sammy Sosa's the guy. Maybe I liked him when I was young, and I just don't remember it. Who knows? But jersey's long gone now, unfortunately. But all right, we got to get off here because we're going to start talking about MLB and Sammy Sosa for the next 35 minutes. We got more pods to do. So appreciate you guys watching as always. Get involved in the comments. We'll see y'all next time. Thanks.